Hey everybody, welcome to the Drop the Beat podcast. My name is Charles Laurita.
And I'm Will Sarver.
And we want to thank you guys so much for listening to us beat off today, as you have been for the past couple weeks. Will, they've been listening to us beat off, God, for a long time now. You know, this is our 9th episode, man.
I know, and after 9 episodes, you just kind of get used to it. You know.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's. I think we're trying to beat off just in different ways now. Just because we've been beating it so hard, but I think we've really been doing it. And people frankly, I think they like listening to us beat off. I wish they probably wish they could see us beat off as well.
I know.
These little beat off sessions.
And you know, the nice thing about being in quarantine is you get pretty creative. If you know what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, why? What have you been doing?
Oh, nothing. We'll talk later.
Okay, that's fine. Anyway,
Yeah.
just whatever you do, wash your hands, because pink eye is very serious. Even with a mask, you can still get it.
Oh, that's good to know.
Anyway, I feel like we always start these with some kind of ass humor, and I'm pretty okay with that because people
You
are still
have to.
listening, so that's
You have
okay.
to.
You gotta. You gotta.
They turned it off by now.
Well, I don't know if you knew this, but how we get our topics for the show is people actually write in for us to discuss these long form kind of segments here. I don't know if you knew that or not, but for anyone whose question we pick, we'll be in contact and we send them a free shirt. So we are going to shirt them completely. It's going to be with like a big shirt cannon. Like from my house, I'm going to just like a thump, and it's going to launch it, and they're going to
It's
just
got
put
to
their
have
arms
that
out.
noise too.
That's the only noise it has. Thump.
Yeah.
But if you would like to submit to submit a question, that's my good onomatopoeia. Thank you. Thump. If you would like to submit a question for us to discuss here on the Drop the Beat podcast, go to www.charleslaurita.com/contact and fill out the field with your name, where the hell you from, and your goddamn question, and we can discuss it in a long format. So no questions like what's your favorite color, although I know we always say we could really go into that kind of a thing because it's purple and that's the only logical scientific choice. It's got the sex appeal and the balls at the same time, which could be one in the same. But I digress. Will, we actually have a guest on the show today.
You know what? I did notice. I did notice that.
You didn't notice there was another person pulled up on screen, just kind of sitting there watching us?
I'm loving the background he's got. It's got me distracted.
Well, yeah, we're gonna have to talk about that.
I'm hoping it's not too creepy.
No,
so
you can't get much creepier than my face and just like a monotone post face. But anyway, the gentleman that we have as a guest on the show today, he is a music teacher, a college professor, a professional clarinetist, all around just fantastic guy. You guys have probably seen him joining the Mischief in the Mischief Studio Series videos. He like it when we call him Big Papa, quite frankly. So I would like to introduce you guys and welcome to the show, Mr. Goddamn Greg Marsh.
Hey-o.
My man.
hello, gentlemen. Thank you so much for having me.
Greg, thank you so much for joining us, man. I'm so happy you were able to do this and we were able to get everybody together. I do feel like sometimes we're like a Three Amigos kind of thing, so this is like a nice quarantizzle reunion, if I should say so myself.
Yeah.
Ooh, yes. Ooh, I like that. I like that. Although I will say, putting the three of us together like this on a podcast, you're just asking for trouble.
Oh, this is going to be horrible. We're never going
can't
to
argue
this
with
is
that.
This is gonna be a disaster.
I'm going to immediately delete this when I'm done. This will never see the light of day. This will never air.
Oh, okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
I didn't even hit record, so it
Great.
works.
No, I'm not even dressed, honestly. But I was going to say, Greg, how is quarantine going for you? What you been up to? How's life been? Are you staying sane? Are you staying safe? Are you washing your hands?
Sane is a relative term.
That's true.
I don't know if I've ever been completely sane.
Ditto.
I think my scale of insanity to sanity maybe has sort of gone a little bit farther over to insanity, but I mean, no, I don't know. I don't think it's really caused me to go too crazy.
Yeah, well,
just generally trying to stay as busy as I can, doing a lot of online teaching and getting a lot more time to practice, which is great.
That's
Amen.
always good.
Amen.
And
Yes.
growing a quarantine-like beard that gives me a hermit-esque look.
Yeah, but you
and,
totally make it. You totally make it
know,
work, though.
Oh man, I appreciate that. You know, this
I
is
dig it.
yeah, I don't know. It's good. It's good. It makes me look a little bit more distinguished, and you know, I always try and go for the more distinguished look.
I was gonna say, take
yeah.
it from someone who's had a soul patch since he was 7. Interesting facial
Wow.
hair. Chicks dig the interesting facial hair. They're just like, wow, what is that? A sideburn on the front of your face? That's amazing.
The old front burn.
Yeah, ooh. I think it was actually Frontburn was Will when you were on varsity in a wrestling team in high school. I think Frontburn was your nickname, was it?
Yeah, when I wrestled in high school. Yep.
Nice. Mine was Mud Knuckle, but we'll talk about that another time. But for those of you guys who obviously, for those of you guys listening at home and can't see us, we're on Zoom, and Greg's background is me. It is. It's the classic purple picture with my beautiful curly locks trying to look very smoldering and debonair, and it looks like I'm mounting him from behind.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And your 20-year-old soul patch is currently resting on my head.
It looks like an alfalfa coming off of your head, which is great.
It does.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I just noticed
that.
I
wasn't even thinking that. You're
Oh my
absolutely
God.
right.
But
Wow.
gents, the reason I've actually asked you all here today, which
There's a reason.
yeah, I mean, I just want to see how you were doing, and I think we're going to sign off in a second. So
okay.
thank you guys so much for listening.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
see you
take
later.
care.
We actually have a question someone has written in for us to talk about, and I think this is going to be a good one for us because I do believe this one really does affect all of us on different personal levels, a little deeply as it may be. This is from Paige from Pennsylvania. She writes in, which now Paige, we are going to send you a fine ass shirt for to wear. So I will be in contact with you, and hopefully you will dig it. But Paige writes in, "Hey guys," hi Paige. She says, "I've been a performer." We're all waving, but you can't see us. I've been a performer for years on a professional circuit, and to this day, I still get nervous before performing. What advice do you have for dealing with anxiety in a musical setting? And if that ain't the goddamn realest question we've had so far,
Oh boy.
I don't know what is, boys. I just don't know what is. Because I really do feel we all relate to this. I know I do. I've publicly started talking about it, which I hadn't for years and years and years because I was kind of embarrassed. And it's that whole idea where it's like, oh, people see you bleed and they see weakness. And I really didn't want to kind of tread into that territory. But now I'm kind of like, it is who I am. I'm human. But I really feel for Paige. So I don't know. I mean, in a professional setting, whether she's gigging or recording or more in the fine music side of things, I'm not necessarily sure. She didn't really specify, but it sounds like she has a performance anxiety kind of thing. So, William, I'm going to bounce it to you real quick to start with this kind of thing. We have to. We're all going to tell embarrassing stories because I know. I have to tell you. I have to tell my favorite one, which you got to experience when you weren't even in the band for that long. So, we'll have to talk about that. But for you, is it a natural thing for you before gigging or recording or any kind of musical event to kind of feel a little bit of an adrenaline rush like that beforehand, almost kind of borderlining on anxiety? And what do you kind of attribute it to? That would be a nice way to kind of start with.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely happens, and it's a real thing. We could start there, but I think more so at this stage in the game for me, it's more adrenaline than anything. I guess when I was starting out younger and learning, it definitely nerves were a thing. And for me personally, I correlate that with lack of preparedness.
Interesting.
I tend to be nervous if I'm not 100% with the material. And it's like I didn't really work on this, and I got a show or a performance, and then it's like, boy, the nerves are coming because I'm like, I really don't know. It's like I kind of did 75% of this, but I learned that early on. Where like now it's like I want to be 100%, if not better, so that way I can kind of relax, and it just be a matter of controlling like adrenaline and excitement for me. I think that's what I battle with the most now is kind of containing the beast inside as far as adrenaline goes. Because like when we're playing some of these shows, it's like it is awesome, There's a ton of people. It's a great vibe, and I'm just like, and especially as a drummer, it's like usually adrenaline's gonna come with you're pushing it. You're pushing the time. You're gonna rush, and it's like I gotta hold it down for everybody else. So it's like I gotta be like on top of my game, and I gotta really contain the animal that's inside that just wants to go nuts. But I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys as far as.
Oh, totally.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for me personally, if I get anxiety or I'm nervous, I'm not prepared. I'm not
that's very
confident in
interesting.
myself.
Yeah.
You know.
I was gonna say so I'm gonna bounce it over to Greg because I know he can relate with us definitely on this. Mine comes from a different place, which is very, very weird.
Ooh,
But
I
let me
like
throw
this.
it. No, not the place you're thinking. It's sorry. but I want to bounce it over to goddamn Greg Marsh because so I would say to bounce off of kind of what Will was saying, Greg, have you ever has anxiety ever been attributed to what you're doing because of lack of preparedness or what you feel would be the lack of preparedness? I mean, what do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So, I always try and prepare as much as I can for any performance, knowing that no matter how much I prepare, I know there's always going to be that voice inside my head that is constantly gnawing at me saying, you're going to mess up. You're going to do something wrong. Think about who's in the audience, that kind of a thing. That always gets to me. And I think, sort of piggybacking off the preparation, I think that awareness, knowing who's in the audience, who you're trying to quote unquote impress. And, I think just, I think from a very young age, you're always kind of thinking, wow, maybe, maybe one of your peers is kind of trying to give you like a little bit of a vex or a curse, like they want you to do poorly because they might not like the way you look or the way you sound, or they might not be as good of a musician as you are, and I think that played a really big role for me going up through high school, because as high school kids can be pretty mean when they want to be.
I've never once been made fun of in high school. No, never. Me looking like this? How could anyone even attempt that?
Yeah. So obviously over the years, the more you perform, and the more you get used to being in that certain medium or that certain setting, it becomes a little bit more palatable, and it just sort of becomes something that you do. And, at the end of the day, if you enjoy it enough, you're going to find ways to make it work. It might not be an easy road or something that you'll completely get over, because quite frankly, anxiety lives in everybody, and it comes out at all times of day.
Very true.
At night, and there's no way of really kind of unleashing the beast. I think it's more of just kind of harnessing it, and that's kind of my take on it.
I like that. I like that very, very much. Especially the thing where you said, it doesn't go away necessarily. Ever. I mean, you can channel it. You can aim the cannon, so to speak. Yep. And I think that's kind of a testament, though, to being human, because that's one of the big things I always think of, where I see people who go out on stage and they act like the biggest thing in the world, and very, somewhat egotistical to a certain degree, and they don't feel any of that anymore. And for me, every time I go out on stage to perform, it still feels like the first time, even though I've done it for years and years and years. So I think it's the fact that I've been performing on stage for so long, and I still feel the jitters like that. I think that's refreshing. Yeah. I think it's you're human, and you genuinely like what you're doing. For me, I wish it was more adrenaline fueled than anything, which I mean necessarily it is, and I wish it was sometimes just the jitters, but it sometimes gets worse. But
Sorry, I think it gets that way for me. I think at first I have those butterflies in the pit of my stomach saying, wow, okay, this is really happening. And then as I get into it, then my adrenaline starts to take over. And then that's when things really start to, like, go down that hill, know, because I think everything leading up to, like, the high point on the hill is, like, all those negative emotions that are trying to, like, gnaw at you as you're trying to just get up there to see the sights. And then once you see the sights, then oh my goodness, you're in your element, and then you just head right on down the hill, and it's a glorious feeling.
Yeah, I mean, when you actually get to that quote unquote point of enlightenment, it's so worth it. But I mean, I was very, very closed off about my anxiety stuff for years. Like, I wouldn't even tell my bandmates. Like, it was Will found out the hard way during setting up for a gig. So I don't get the fun anxiety where I get heart palpitations. I get tummy grumbles and nausea and dry heave. So it's not the pretty one that everyone likes. It's very physical, and when people see it, it's even worse. And I'd gone to therapy for years about it, and we kind of tried to figure out where it was from. And we were able to kind of deduce where it was from. And for me, what triggers it, not only just performance, but it's a new setting, a new event that I'm kind of going through, and me not being able to go out and indulge in it for a while and get used to it. It's normally just like, okay, you're here, boom, get up on stage. So it's like when we would do some of these gigs, especially the Asbury Park stuff, like we would do like the Stone Pony things and stuff like that, where you literally can only come in the building 20 minutes before your set, and then you have to just immediately get up on stage, and that killed me. That absolutely killed me. Or like any of the festivals we've done, it was stuff like that where it's like, show up this early, and it's like I need to get in, I need to read the room, I need to really like kind of feel the space in like my weird empathic kind of way. I can't just jump and go. And that's why performing with Will for all of these years, I have like this incredible just dumbfounded respect, because he just keeps it, even if you're anxious, he keeps it so cool. And I'm so envious.
Be cool, man. Be cool.
He makes it look so damn good. He's just so smooth and so cool, and it's like doesn't break a damn sweat. And it's like
I don't sweat. It's really weird.
It is a little strange.
I have a problem,
but it's okay. I think it's the werewolf problem. Like you're part dog. Like how pores work.
But I'm your rock.
But
that's my job.
You are, and it's like you got, and so the first time that Will ever witnessed this happen, and I think Chandler knew about it. I think he knew I had some issues here and there.
I didn't know at all.
Will didn't. You were in the band how many months at this point? Because that was a while ago.
Not long.
So to set the scene, we were playing in Trenton at the Art All Night Festival. What they do for that thing, it's 24 hours for people that don't know and aren't in the area. It's 24 hours. They turn this giant wireworks building, like big foundry building, into an art gallery for 24 hours. They have bands. They have an indoor stage, an outdoor stage. The indoor stage is the big one. The outdoor one's pretty big too. We've played on both. So we had our set was supposed to be 11 p.m. and that's one of the good spots. 12 is the best. And of course, we get there. It's a lot of people. It's maybe like 500 or so in this room. It was a decent amount of people. And nothing's running on time, so they push it back. So now our set is around midnight, and that's the good spot. And it just started to rain outside. So we're on the indoor stage, and we're setting our stuff up here. I'm fixing my amp or what, I don't know, gear stuff, so I'm just hitting buttons and making it look like I'm doing something. Trying to keep my cool, because I'm like, okay, it's a decent amount of people. Will's setting his drums up, and so it starts to rain outside, and everyone who was outside came in. So last I looked out, there were maybe 300-400 people. It was a good amount of people. I'm bending down, and Will goes, "Oh my God, dude, look behind you!" And there were probably 1,200 people now in this room that just kind of sprung on me.
Wow!
And I started dry heaving.
Wow!
Right near his bass drum. He's like, "Dude, are you gonna throw up in my drum?" Because he didn't know what I was doing. That was one of the worst experiences. Because as I'm dry heaving, there's people around the back of the stage, and there's guys like, "Yo, what are you doing? What are you doing? Oh, yeah, we see what you're doing." And I'm like, "Oh, this makes it so much worse, so much worse." But we're getting ready. I'm like on my knees on the stage, and I'm like, oh, I can't do this. And Chandler like looks over to me, and goes, dude, you got this. And I was like, okay. And we got right past the opening riff for the first song, and right when I had to sing, I was okay, and then we were just good to go.
Yeah, golden.
That was one of the best gigs. I don't know, like, and it was crazy because so many people in that room knew the words to our songs, which was cool. And then we pulled out the Spice Girls in that room, and
Game over.
People went bananas. Everyone was dancing, everyone was singing. It was
Nice.
one of the best gigs ever, but it was one of the hardest things to get to. Just because of that. And I mean,
sure.
what I deduce now, I don't know if Paige can relate to this kind of thing. My problem, and I think it was always from, I've never been a part of anyone's band. I've always been the leader of my own band. So I feel, I guess subconsciously, a lot of the weight is on my shoulders. And what my therapist has told me for years is it's the idea that you are so worried about letting people down that you take it that hard, that you're so upset that you're going to, not keep everyone happy, or you're not going to do a good job, and that's kind of looming over me. And that's with everything in life. That's why I have such a hard problem saying no to people. Or every time someone needs help, I'm just immediately there. And we kind of deduced it to being what's called the Superman complex, which is a real thing. It's a real kind of anxiety-driven disorder for high-functioning anxiety. 'Cause that's what I have. That's why I'm constantly a million miles a minute. That's why I barely sleep. That's why I'm working on something all the time. I can't just sit and not do anything. And it's the idea. It kind of sucks that it's a DC comic character as opposed to a Marvel comic character. But whatever.
Yeah.
Because Spider-Man complex sounds way better, but that sounds like you'd have to go to a hospital for that. But the Superman complex is, it's essentially how he's written, where it's, he has the power, and he feels like he has to help everyone because that's he puts it upon himself, and when he can't do it, or when he does do it, he feels like he could have done better. Like a lot of the Superman kind of complex stuff is, unreasonable hours of work, unrealistically high goals, the fear you're going to let people down, you feel like you have to help everybody. It's just like all of this kind of crazy stuff. It's very high functioning. And that, I don't know if I had that and then just became a performer and it bounced off of that, or I developed it from being a performer. Because I remember a time when I was in high school before I had any anxiety stuff, which is crazy. Do you guys remember a time before any of that kind of thing? Like if I bounce it over to Will there, do you remember a time when you were able to just kind of go out on stage and not second guess yourself and just be able to just go and wing it and just, because you've played some pretty big places and done a whole lot of intense studio work and things like that.
Yeah, I
think I'm envious.
Oh yeah, it's so great.
It is.
Yeah, look where I'm at now.
In your bathroom doing a podcast.
Exactly. Yeah, with no pants on.
Yeah. Spoiler alert for everyone at home. We're all sitting on toilets right now.
Right. Yeah. I think.
Hey, you never know.
Yeah. I think for me it was like when you're younger, you're able to just go do something and you don't think about it. I think as I got older, I got more into my own head, and it's been
absolutely
it's like at its worst right now, and every year goes by, it gets worse and worse, and I'm always my own worst enemy. But like when I was young, I could, I didn't really think about it. I didn't think about what people were going to think and care. And,
you're just worried if girls were watching.
Yeah, exactly.
He still is.
Yeah.
Yeah, duh.
Mom, are
the
you
whole
out
point.
there? Yeah.
Yeah, Grandma.
But but now it's I think about it more. And I don't want to. Like I said, back to the preparedness for me is a thing. And that's why I do my best. And sometimes I probably go a little over the top with my preparation. It's like even when we have a gig, it's like, I've played these songs 1,000 times, but you know what? I'm still running through them days or even a week before. Like it's like going to be like my first gig again. Just because
that's such a good outlook, though. I love that.
It's
No, I was just gonna say, I think you think of that as sort of like a super heightened form of anxiety, and it very well may be. But when I hear something like that, I hear somebody who wants to go the extra mile as a musician, and in my eyes and in my heart, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
When I talk to my students about preparation and a desire to wanna play and to wanna perform, that's one of the real big issues that we cover. And I think when they come to see me play, they watch my passion, they watch my interest, they watch my preparation, and it sort of just trickles down to them, and they say, oh wow, well, it works for him, and he's on stage, and he clearly has no nerves when he's on stage, which by the way is absolute BS.
He's real.
Now they all know.
He's
nice
human.
job,
Yeah,
Greg.
no, it's real. No, the cat's out of the bag.
Yeah.
Greg Marsh is
He's not a machine.
Bag of nerves. He
Nice,
is not a
nice.
machine by any means, but he does his best to portray it
In the third person.
as such. Exactly. Yeah. No. He talks in the third person a lot.
See,
but-
and I love what both of you guys kind of said with that, and Will, especially with that kind of aspect where you approach everything like it's still your first gig. That is the complete, lack of ego. I love that. So I love that so much because it's no matter how good or how much you progress, you're always going to have that initial excitement, that kind of initial love and kind of childlike wonder for it. Which is great. Which thankfully, it's not necessarily the first gig because the first gig you played with us was just a really weird, gross, sketchy hooker hotel. But other than that, I mean, so now kind of hanging with Greg for a second. I mean,
yes,
it sounds like from what Paige wrote in that she possibly had a bad experience with something like this, which is very, very probable. I mean, do you remember any notable experiences where you had a bad bout with kind of anxiety or nerves before a gig, and how did you kind of work yourself out of that or talk yourself out of that? Because that's a very big deal. It's one of the things I've learned. You really have to kind of talk yourself out of it because adrenaline is a bitch. It's one of the best chemicals, but it
can be the worst.
It's the worst.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with that. One stands out. And it was pretty early on. I have been playing since I was in 4th grade. So I was a freshman in high school at the time. And my high school had recently formed a wind ensemble. So they had a large concert band, but they never had any like smaller types of wind bands. So the group I was in was sort of a quote unquote experimental group. Like we met before school.
That's a lot of pressure on you, though. I mean, because
Yeah,
there's less people,
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, I wasn't thinking in those terms just because I was excited to be in the group, number one, as a freshman.
Yeah.
And number two, I was sort of thrown into the principal clarinet role as a freshman. And coming from junior high band where you're doing, like musical medleys and like, watered down abridgments of marches and symphonies, like you really don't get a lot of very technical or very exposed music, and then all of a sudden you get to high school, and all of a sudden it just goes from like you're just kind of playing, and then you get to high school, and oh wow you are seriously playing now, because the music just takes such a huge leap forward in just the amount of exposure and the amount of technical prowess that is needed to get through those pieces. So we were, it was an experimental group, which ended up staying, by the way, which is cool. So
Nice.
To this day, they have like a fully functioning wind ensemble and classes, and
Awesome.
all that great stuff.
That's good.
So it was cool. But one of the first things we did outside of the school, and this kind of goes back to what you guys were talking about before with experience and familiarity. So, obviously when you're in school, you play in your auditorium and you play for a certain type of audience, parents, siblings. what have you, and you get pretty comfortable with that, and that seems.
There's
like,
usually no
know,
judgment from that either, which is because it's your family and friends, and it's kind of like, oh, they're going to love it regardless. And,
Exactly.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Not a very diverse
you go
audience.
So you go in, and your preparation, I mean, a high school is kind of meh at best. That's just the way it is. You always kind of pick it up a little bit later in life. But, obviously, as a freshman coming over, I was just like, okay, well, this is cool. I'm kind of, I'm sitting here. Why am I sitting in this principal chair?
Yeah.
And then we were playing a piece by Gustav Holst. All my band nerds out there will know this piece.
Oh boy,
Gustav Holst's First Suite in E flat. Arguably one of the greatest pieces of all time.
He did the planets,
Wind
right?
Band.
Sorry to interrupt.
He did.
Okay.
He did do the planets. Yeah, the planets was originally for a piano, and then it was transcribed for orchestra.
Mars was dope.
It's kind of interesting hearing some of that stuff from the planets because we're so used to all those different dynamic changes that happen in that piece, and you listen to the original piano version and all you get is like really the initial attacks. So the initial attack is loud and then everything else kind of like fades away, whereas in orchestras you can have like initial attack and then like a forte piano or a forte piano rising back up to forte or fortissimo, which you can't obviously do on a piano. It would be cool if you could, but
that would be badass.
Yeah, wouldn't it? So anyway, sorry, back to First Suite. So, it was obviously the first time I had seen this piece and heard this piece. And we get to the second movement, and there is an enormous clarinet solo. And I had no idea. And all of a sudden I start playing. I'm saying, oh my goodness, wow, why am I the only one playing right now? And, and obviously you start shaking, you start, your hands start, starting to like sweat a little bit and kind of like slip off of the keys.
Palms are sweaty.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Mom's spaghetti.
Yes.
Exactly.
Nice.
That's what we're having for dinner tonight.
Very good.
Ooh,
that
nice.
sounds great.
See, I was going to
sounds
say
really
that's
great.
got to be so tough because especially when you get to high school, that going from middle school, you have your handheld with a lot of those pieces, and then you get the high school stuff, and it's like they're expecting you to cold read all this stuff like right off the bat.
Exactly.
And that's horrifying.
So yeah, sure. No, and in addition to that, it gets better. So after a while, I started to realize, okay, this piece has a big clarinet solo, so I went home, practiced, and got it to the point where I felt pretty comfortable with it. And then in addition to playing it in school, which was fine, we also went up to the College of New Jersey. I'm from South Jersey, for those that don't know. So going up to the College of New Jersey is what I do. So
we just kind of go a little horizontal to get there. That's
exactly.
I can hear it in his accent.
Mine's completely north. So we went up there for what was called the TCNJ Band Invitational at the time. And it sounds super fancy, and I'll tell you, it was literally just two bands. It was my high school band and another high school band from North Jersey, and that was it. So the way it worked was, for part of the day, you had the group go off in sections and work with people from the TCNJ Wind Ensemble on the pieces that you were playing, and the Holst was one of them. And the rest of the day was either looking around the campus or lunch or what have you, and then you finish with a concert. And the concert was attended by a lot of the people that were associated with the college. So it wasn't just some of the students that went there, it was most of the faculty. And I remember and most of the people that were in the wind ensemble, and we saw them perform as well before we played, which I think was a bit of a sticking issue for me, because I heard them play and I was like, my goodness, they're tremendous,
No, not at all.
How am I going to compare to that? And I started thinking, my goodness, and it got in my head big time. It really did. And by the time we got on stage and started playing the Holst and we got to the second movement, I started playing and I remember the notes just completely stopping. Like they stopped and I wasn't quite sure what to do. I was pretty sure, like the diaphragm muscles in my stomach, not in my stomach, around my stomach and lungs were tightening up.
Oh no!
And I was like, my goodness, what is happening? Because something like that had never happened to me before, and it made perfect sense to me when I got off stage. I said, my goodness, there were college level players, there were college professors, all sort of just like honing in, watching me at that one particular moment. And as a 15-year-old,
that's horrifying.
That's a lot. That is
Yeah.
a lot to take in, for sure. My band director came up to me afterwards, and he's like, "Hey, you okay?" He was like really cool about it, we had a conversation about it, and he said, "It's totally cool. It's all in performance anxiety," and that was the first time I had heard that term. I was like, oh my goodness, wow. So this happens to a lot of people. He said, it happens to everybody. And
That's
I said,
true.
okay, that's helpful. I can work with that. And he gave me this book to read. And as a high schooler, reading a book is a big deal. So the fact that I actually did it was quite astounding.
Spark notes.
Damn.
Yeah, they didn't really have Spark Notes for this book, or like YouTube, YouTube reviews on this particular book. Because back in the year 2000, everyone remembers that from Conan? Anybody?
I do.
Okay.
I remember.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Oh,
great.
boy.
So he gave me this book that was called The Inner Game of Music, which was written in conjunction with the same author that wrote The Inner Game of Tennis. I think he also wrote a book on skiing. Basically, just ways to reduce your anxiety to the point where you can be more effective in what you
Interesting.
do
Very
as a musician. And this version was called The Inner Game of Music, and there was one chapter that I really held on to and still quote frequently to my students. There was a chapter that talked about two different voices in your head. There's the type 1 voice, which is very negative.
What does it sound like, though? What does the actual timbre of the voice sound like?
See?
Oh,
It's
okay.
like very like 1920s.
That's like James Cagney?
old-timey. Yeah, you better seen, not heard, see? That kind of thing.
What's the other one sound like, Greg?
Oh, hello!
Ooh, was it Mrs. Doubtfire?
Yes, that's what I was going for. Exactly.
So you got James
Yes,
Cagney
great.
and Mrs. Doubtfire.
James Cagney and Mrs. Doubtfire. Exactly.
That's crazy.
So
you
have
need
type 1.
help, Greg.
Who are you telling, man?
Oh
Sheesh.
boy, I know.
Yeah. So, they have the type 1, which is very negative, very, poking at everything you're doing, saying you're gonna mess up. There's no way you're gonna get through this. Everybody's watching you. Like this is gonna be like
You're
the
gonna
worst
go out on
moment of
stage
your
and your
life.
pants are gonna fall down.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. Exactly.
Where if you're a stripper, that's the point. But any other profession, probably not.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, and then there's You crazy.
I am
Charles.
a little bit.
A little bit, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, and then there's the type 2, which is the very nurturing, very positive, saying, you know what, you've prepared for this, you know what you're doing, you're going to be totally fine, don't worry about what other people think, go out there because you enjoy it, and you want to do good things. And that's the voice that you're trying to, again, nurture and instill. Everybody kind of starts out with a larger type 1. And then by the time they're successful musicians or whatever they're doing in life, the type 2 has gradually taken over. And I think with the amount of experience that you have in that field, it almost inevitably becomes that way, regardless of how much type 1 is left over. I feel like type 2 always kind of ends up winning in the end, which is great. But I always try and tell my students that, because my students always come in and say, I always play it better at home. I'm sorry, I'm sorry it sounds like this in the lesson, and and I
You say
always
you should be sorry. Now
Do it again.
But no, I'm not. I'm not at all intimidating. Like in my lessons, I like to joke around. I like to keep things as light as possible. But obviously, if I have to get serious, I will. But for the most part, I like making people comfortable, because then you get the best results. Because they feel that it's a comfortable place for them to come and try out their budding musicianship. And I think
very true, very true.
I think that's really important these days. I feel like the scare tactics of yesteryear are kind of that, which is nice, because I don't think they really hold much of a place in today's society. I think you go out with
Will, I'm pretty sure you could relate to the scare tactics, right?
I think
all
scares
too
me, that's for
familiar
sure.
with that.
Oh boy, William. But no, that's Greg. That's a very cool point of view, and I think to have kind of a nice space where, I mean, that's how I am with my students too. I know you're the same, where it's like mistakes are natural. Like, you should never be afraid of something like
Absolutely.
that. The quote I always use for my students, because I'm a very creepy, spooky boy, I was always a big fan of all the Universal monster movies, as I would be, because you've seen what I look like. And there was a really cool quote, because I always had, anxiety also came from, not that I'm competitive anymore, but when I was younger, it's the stupid guitarist nature. It's everyone's competitive, and it's ridiculous. It's subjective anyway, but I always would be like, I'm comparing myself, and that really contributed to a lot of anxiety. And I would just be like, look, it doesn't even matter. And there was a really cool quote. There was an exchange between Boris Karloff and Lon Chaney Jr. And Lon Chaney Jr. was the Wolfman, and Boris Karloff was the Frankenstein monster. And Lon Chaney Jr. was this, man of 1,000 faces. He had all these crazy roles, and he was just this awesome actor. And Boris Karloff was a lot older than him, but Boris Karloff was like, I am never going to be as good of an actor as you. What do I even do? And Lon Chaney Jr. said, well, don't worry about being me. You be you and be the best you can possibly be.
Yes.
And you can't lose. And I love that. And I had to keep that in mind on the first time that I remember having anxiety in front of a large group of people. And that was the worst thing. It's a large group of people. Everyone can see it. You can't hide. So, Will, you don't even know this story. This is a really good one.
Oh, new story.
It's another good one. I have really weird interactions with everyone, but this is the first time I remember having anxiety in front of people, and I was at this benefit concert outside. It was a kind of warm day, so at the time we kind of wrote it off as, I was probably dehydrated, I was having sun poisoning or something crazy like that. And then you look back, it's like, I was having a massive anxiety attack. We had about a half hour to get on stage because we were waiting for the other band to stop. And all people there that I knew. It was a lot of people in this big picnic grove, big stage, everything like that. And I started feeling nauseous, so I kept running back and forth to the porta potty and just dry heaving. Nothing's coming out, dry heaving. And I did it probably 10 times within like a half hour. It was not fun. I was sweating profusely. Everyone saw it. And at the time, in my little blues trio I had, my uncle played bass. He was my bassist in this little blues trio. And he was a police officer, so he knew a lot of the other police officers in the area. So this one cop comes up to him and he goes, "Hey man, look, I would want to know if it was one of my family members, but I just wanted to tell you, and I think you should know, your nephew over there. He I didn't want to say this, but he keeps running back and forth into the bathroom, and he's doing drugs in there." And that's what this cop said to my uncle. And my uncle was like, he's getting sick. He's not doing drugs. And he's like, well, I don't know. He's got the long hair and the sunglasses, and he just fits the, kind of just fits the build of what it would be. And he's like, no. He's
stereotypes, man.
And I was like, man. He's like, no, he's getting sick in there. So the first 2 or 3 songs up on stage, I couldn't even sing because I thought I was going to be that sick and throw up. So I had to just play the vocal parts on my guitar. I had to play the melody parts as like a solo kind of thing, which totally worked. Like, it definitely worked. And then, like, I got comfortable and played. But that was a horrifying experience because I didn't know it was wrong. I was like, am I dying? What is happening? And then over the years, I started noticing it happening more and more and more. Thankfully, and I would say this to Paige because I, never feel bad to talk to anyone about something like this because it's always good to have, a secondary voice who's not a friend, because friends will always kind of tell you what you want to hear as opposed to what you need to hear, and I've realized that. Talking to someone for me really, really helped because I was just so in my own head and not necessarily sure how to just deal with it. And it's tough because, sometimes it hits me to the point where it's like, going places is tough, or sometimes it's even almost like borderline agoraphobia kind of thing where it's like sometimes I can't leave the house and it's kind of weird. And I never talk about things like this because you get such a weird response from people when you talk about anxiety, because there are so many people in my music community who think I'm faking it or they think I'm doing it for attention. And it's like, man, I wish I was that content with my ego where you could just write things off like that. And it's like it's I'm a human being with a oddly complex brain, and it's like I'm a also on top of it, it's like I now know why a lot of musicians do so many substances because they don't want to feel these things. I'm what you would, I guess, call a teetotaler, where I don't do anything. I've never drank or smoked or done a drug, so I don't have that avenue for me to take the edge off, quote unquote.
Take the edge
so
off.
It's which me and Will have heard multiple times from different studio people when doing recording work at like 11 in the morning. But other than that, but I was gonna say, so now let's get to the kind of the bare bones resolution of it, and I'm gonna throw it back to Will. What can you really, really do if you're in this just tense situation, adrenaline's taking over, you're trying to kind of center yourself without your brain trucking through everything you're doing? How can you find your center, so to speak, and calm yourself and reassure yourself that you got this and you're going to do fine? What can you really do for this,
That's a tough question.
It is there's no right answer.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong answer.
Right.
It's more so it is very objective to who is the beholder of the anxiety.
Right,
so to speak.
like whatever works for you.
Yeah.
But I know there's multiple.
And hopefully it works for somebody else. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So like for me, like example, to fight off any kind of anxiety, I get to the venue very early, and I walk around.
Yep.
I take it all in. One of the most gratifying things ever was I went to see in Atlantic City at the Hard Rock Casino. I went to go see Penn and Teller, and Penn was walking around incognito, but he's like 8 feet tall, so you knew it was him. And he had like a ball cap on. He's walking around. He's just doing laps around the top floor of this casino. And I, stopped him and wished him good luck on the show and this and that and this and that. And he was like, yeah, he goes, every time we got a gig, I walk around, I got to get used to the place, I got to shake the jitters off. And that was amazing to hear that from someone
Nice.
like him who's been performing for literally ever.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, he still gets nervous and he's still got to take it in, because he was
Sure.
literally just doing laps with his lady friend like around this thing. And I was
Yeah.
like, that's awesome. He was so sweet and so nice about it. And he, and I thought that was him. So like that's for me is a big thing. Really kind of trying to talk to myself and just being like, there's no competition here. People are here because they like to see you. They're not here to judge you. They're not here to tear you down or rip you a new one. So that's kind of things for me to calm myself. And it's really just, I try to break it down where it's like, I'm going up to sing songs to people who want to hear these and to play my thing, and they respect me as a player. Sure, there's going to be people out there who are buttholes, but everyone's a butthole, and it's fine. So that's for me personally. It's kind of just getting used to my surroundings and reassuring myself and just being like, okay, I got this. I can totally do this. What about you guys? What would be some things or some tips that you would kind of throw into that circle?
Tips or tricks. Yeah, I do like the idea of getting there early.
Because you always go when we get the gigs. You always go for walks with me. If I'm walking around somewhere, I'll be like, hey, go take a walk with me, and we'll literally just go on a walk somewhere.
And it's like you gotta get a lay of the land, and it's also, I look at it as like a gear standpoint, is like I need to know what we're dealing with. I want to hear what it sounds like other people are playing. I want to hear what it sounds like. If we have to make any adjustments, I need to know as a drummer, because I'm bringing a million things, what I need. It's like, oh, well, they got this, but they don't have that. All right, so I'm preparing myself for what I have to bring. So, like, getting there early is a great idea, and you kind of just relax a little bit. And for me, I like, if I have the capability and the space, I like to warm up to some degree.
Yeah.
which will take your mind off of thinking about what you have to do, because you're worried about the moment right now, which is warming up, going through exercise, long tones, whatever. Just get your body prepared for it, because I mean, for a drummer, and I'm sure for everybody, if you're not warmed up, you know, it's like the worst thing is when I can't warm up and I have to go
going in cold,
and it's like,
Oof,
oh, by the end of the 45-minute set, wow, just got warmed up, and it's like, can you imagine what I could have done 45 minutes ago? It's like,
I know.
So like, try warming up, and you know, for me to try, and the biggest thing for me is trying to pull back the adrenaline, is like, just breathe. I really concentrate on just breathing and trying to control it. And even like, if you were to stare at me when I play like a creep, you will see me at times like take
like we always do.
like take deep breaths, or like, it's not me catching my breath or anything. It's just like, oh, let's just, you know, I'm getting really it's getting out of control. I can start feeling it. Like, I'm like, all right, reel it back in, pull back the reins.
Yep.
And I think what's interesting, and just from listening to, you know, us chat about this, is like, I think a lot of people don't realize that playing music, a lot of it is mental. There's a mental aspect.
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah.
You
sure.
could be the best
Yeah,
player
yeah.
on this planet, but battling inside of your head is the hardest thing to do. And
Everyone's their own worst enemy.
exactly.
I mean, that's
and
what it
trying
is.
to calm the voice. I think the hardest thing, and what I try and tell people to work on the most, is separating the two. Like Greg was talking about, the two different voices, is trying to, I'm doing everything I can to where I'm getting my head out of, you know, thinking, doubting myself. I'm trying to get my head out of the music, which also comes with preparation, because I'm literally just trying to be in the moment and enjoying, and more importantly, listening to everybody else. But if you're listening to the head, you know, the voice inside your head, or if you don't know the material and you're trying to read that piece of paper that's in front of you, you can forget about blending in with others and listening to others play. And I think that's the hardest thing to do.
Very, very eloquently put, Will.
It's the
So, Greg, I would say every time we have these things and we get close to the end, Will always hits us with this big, beautiful, just bomb, where it's like, he said everything that we could have said in not an hour, and he just kind of just. But Will, that's perfect. I
the mental
I very
game
much
is
like
wicked.
that, Alex.
It really is.
Well
Yeah.
played. Well played.
Very-
People just think
nice,
about
very nice.
you
Yes.
just like people think about
Yes.
music. They're like, oh, you're just gonna practice and you're just gonna play your instrument. It's like, no, I'm doing everything I can.
It's so much more
It's
than that.
so much
So
more
much,
than that.
So much.
And the real pros
So-
and some of the best guys can easily separate the two, and you can be truly in the moment. And that's what music is all about, in my opinion, is being in the moment.
Very
and enjoying
true.
it. And why sacrifice that for not being prepared or not trying to calm your mind? But
Very, very, very beautiful
Absolutely.
sentiment, man. So I want to say, I think in closing for this guy, let's toss it back over to Greg for some final kind of thoughts here towards, to hopefully for, Paige, we've really helped to kind of answer this and shine a better light on it more so, and to see like you're not alone. That's the biggest thing. So Greg, let's toss.
Definitely not.
No.
Hit it.
So Greg, let's toss this bocce. Let's toss this bocce ball in your court. Hopefully our balls touch. What would you say? That's how bocce ball works. I know how we're getting an idiot. I'm a sports guy.
Boy.
Let's. What would you say? Some final closing kind of things. I know you're very
So-
well spoken on this.
Sure. Yeah. No. So I have racked my brain over the past couple of days because you and I spoke a couple of days ago, and you're like, "Hey, you want to come on my podcast?" And I was like,
No, it's
yeah,
stupid.
sure,
It's terrible.
buddy." And you said, yeah, let's go ahead and take some notes. Kind of get some of your thoughts in set. And I was like, okay, I think I can do that. And I got to really thinking the past couple of days, what really helps me more than anything to get through a performance and move on to the next one and pretty much every moment in between. And I've come up with 5 really important points that I'd like to just straight rattle down.
I like this. List it up, Gregory.
It's the bonus.
All right. Okay.
Franz,
so,
list it up. Go for it.
Some of this is going to be a little superfluous because we've already talked about preparation, but that's my number 1. Number 1
round it up, baby. That's good.
I'm going to. My number 1 is preparation. Okay, so for me, and this works for me. This may not work for you, but I'm just throwing it out there. Okay, so preparation, you have to listen to the music before you perform it. Like if you have an opportunity to do that, use any type of program out there, Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, whatever you want. You have to listen to the music. You have to know clearly what it sounds like. As an ensemble player, that is crucial. Okay. Also, you have to mark up the music, right? So this goes for whether you're somebody that reads traditional notation or tablature, or somebody who just does mainly rote things on written reminders on a legal pad, that kind of a thing. You have to mark up the music to the point where it's understandable enough for you to know exactly what you need to do in the moment. So, for example, you get a piece that has, let's say, 5 sharps in the key signature, and, there's 16th notes all over the place. You have to write in the
Sounds
sharps
like one of my
give
sheets that I give to you.
Oh, pretty much every one. Yeah.
You're engraving?
Well, as a clarinetist, you always end up reading way too many sharps when you play with string musicians, and that's just the way it is.
Great.
You're used to it. It's fine. But I think that's crucial. You have to make sure you circle all the dynamics. You have to make sure, if there's a moment that doesn't quite line up with everything else, you have to put a cue in of a part that is very close to where you are, so you have an idea of when to sort of fit your part in. If you have to write certain chord progressions that will help you get through it a little bit more, you do that. You use all of your knowledge that you have, all of the theoretical knowledge you build up over the years, all of the, practice and technical expertise that you've gotten over the years.
See, that's great
because
because
you have to use all of that.
Preparedness will just furthermore bring comfort in that kind of setting.
Exactly. Big time. And in addition to that, as far as preparation is concerned, I recommend when you first get a piece, practice through the entire exercise. And then once you do that, once you get an idea of how it goes through the entire thing, then you split it up into the sections. And then once you get into the sections, if there are little small isolated passages, you tackle those. And then you put everything else together again. Okay?
Piece by piece, baby.
Piece by piece. You have to bar by bar, note by note, step by step, day by day. You have to do it that way. Big time. Okay? So that's number 1, preparation.
Nice.
Number 2, punctuality. This is a real important thing for me. You need to be on time, if not early, for everything that you do. You have to leave yourself more time than you usually need to get somewhere, especially if you live in New Jersey. You know how our roads can be.
Yeah, with the DMV.
With the DMV, man, I'll tell you.
That was me today. That's why I was late.
Shout out to the DMV.
No, they can smell a fart, man.
I'm sure they can, Charles.
They probably did. They sat in my car, so you know they did.
Oh.
So yeah, and the level of punctuality depends on what type of an event you have. So if you have a rehearsal, you could probably show up maybe 15, 20 minutes early just to kind of, for me, getting my reeds warmed up, getting my instrument warmed up and ready to go for a rehearsal. That's generally okay. If you have a performance, I recommend getting there, I'd say at least an hour to make sure you have everything ready to go. Again, just in case you hit some sort of traffic, leave yourself the time. Because the worst thing you can do is get there as it's starting, or worse, as it's going on,
and then the nerves will totally
nerves
spike.
Go straight through the roof.
We've had that.
Big time.
Oh, boy.
Big time. And when you have an audition, it goes up, I think, a little bit more, right? So if you're auditioning for any type of group, like a professional orchestra or a professional wind symphony or anything like that, you have to give yourself enough time to get there and get everything exactly the way you want it. Get used to, your awareness, which I'm going to get to in a second. So that is definitely a big number 2 for me. I get my punctuality.
Sorry, you said a big number 2.
Oh my God, I did. I didn't even realize that.
Oh my God. You guys are disgusting.
This
I'm
is
not
a problem.
associating.
I told you this was going to be a problem.
We're not airing this
Sure
episode.
enough,
No one's going to hear this.
Okay, good. All right. So, but I get my punctuality from my father. My father is incredibly punctual for everything, to the point where, like, you go to family parties and he'd be ready to go like an hour before
the day before.
Exactly. Yeah, and the party's like 10 minutes down
loaded.
the road. He's just he's just that kind of person. But I mean, he's a musician as well.
Mm-hmm.
So he kind of got you, and he was in the Navy for a while. So he kind of got that mindset, for just being like very punctual, very on time. Just making sure he wasn't the last one to cross the finish line, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that was a really big thing for him, and I sort of got that from him. And as a musician, it's a very helpful skill. And for my anxiety, it's very, very helpful because it helps bury that type 1 in the back of my mind, which is great.
Most definitely.
Number 3, experience and familiarity. Okay? Comfort level with the types of music that you're performing is very, very important as well. So if you're a bandsman...
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, big time. Because if you're a bandsman like me and you end up recording with a rock group for the first time, that can be a bit of a wake-up call for somebody who's not used to performing that type of music. For example, so last year, I was graciously asked to record with this great local group, for sake of not wanting to embarrass them. Let's just call them Lars, Laurita, and the Misfits.
They sound terrible.
So yeah, Lars, Laurita, and the Misfits. Yeah, they're a pretty solid group, and they had me come in. And I had never done any type of work with a rock group before, so that was completely out of my element, and I was a little on edge, just trying to figure out how I was going to fit in and how everything was gonna go. And the leader of the band, Lars.
He's an asshole. Yeah.
He still owes me money.
He's a sweetheart. Lars is a sweetheart.
He's a big dump. Don't sugarcoat it.
But he said, "Hey man, it's cool. Just read what's on the page. I have a little click track of what's going on here. And some of the other parts are already recorded, so just kind of try and fit your part in. And being an ensemble player, I really could adhere to that, and I was like, okay, that's great. Okay, I think I can really make this work in my favor. And then as I was done recording my part, he asked me, hey, do you want to go ahead and lay the solo down here on this one track? And I was thinking,
he wouldn't say that. He would never say that.
No, he absolutely
He's out of control.
Lars Laurita absolutely said that. And I was like, my goodness, Lars Laurita, it's just, come on, man, I can't. I just got here. I can't. You're throwing me. You're throwing me into the fire, man. And he said, "Oh, just give it a go. Just kind of improv something." And I'm just a straight classical player. I don't know. My improv skills weren't the best, but I knew enough there where I felt like I could probably get through it. Like even if it wasn't perfect, it would get to the point where it was serviceable. And like people would listen to it and they would say, yeah, people would listen to it and they'd say,
nice.
"Oh yeah, okay, I see what he's going for there."
He's too modest. You know how many people? I literally took one of my guitars to my uncle who does luthery work, and I literally fast forwarded to just your solo when I went.
Aww,
I've showed
adorable.
so many people that with that band. That I have no affiliation with.
For those that don't know, Lars Laurita and the Misfits is actually Charles Laurita and the Mischief.
Look at that
Whoa.
plug, baby!
Whoa.
Yeah,
Yeah, they sound like crap.
Indeed. For those out there that like couldn't quite figure it out, I'm there for you guys.
I was
So
confused.
you're welcome.
I was like, who have you been playing with that I don't know about?
That sounds just
You
like
rap
us.
bastard.
Yeah, I know for sure. But no, I think, again, going in and playing with bands for years and years and years, you know what to expect. But then you go into a new experience like that, and all of a sudden, that type 1 really comes out and says, what are we doing here, man? Like, I don't know.
This
I don't
part's
know.
crap. Whoever wrote it.
But yeah, I think that is absolutely crucial, that you have a comfort level and an idea of what's going to happen before you actually get into it.
Oh, totally.
Like I've been playing with the Eastern Wind Symphony now for over a decade, and I consider the people in that group to be not just good friends or colleagues, but like pretty damn close to family, because I've been fortunate enough to make music with them for such a long time, and I've gotten used to their mannerisms. I've gotten used to the ways they play. It's easier to tune with them. It's easier to blend with them, and it makes the ensemble sound so much better, and it makes me feel so much better, because I have that comfort level. And I think the familiarity with that group is just like beyond compare. I mean, it really is something that I really hold sacred. And I don't say that very often about many things, but I would definitely go there with this group. By far some of the best professional work I've done in my entire life. And I don't make a penny for doing it. It's completely volunteer group.
Yeah.
But it's all for the love of playing. And that's what makes it great, because you're not saddled with that you have to be good because we're paying you mentality, which is great. It allows you to be who you want to be, and it allows you to be the musician you were always kind of meant to be, if that makes sense.
Perfect sense.
Which is like really, really great. Sorry, I'm rambling. Okay, number
Dude,
4.
you're gushing, and I love it. It's good. It's raw.
Very
It's
good.
emotion. It's beautiful.
I know,
Ooh,
it
it's
really
raw.
is. It
You
really
do your
is.
goddamn self,
Yeah.
Greg. I like. Well, not
Yep.
that kind of raw,
Oh.
William. We're go. Anyway, let's. No one's gonna hear this.
So
episode.
I already hit
Oh, my
delete.
goodness. Okay, so so number 4. Number 4 is awareness. Okay, know what kind of an audience you have going into a certain performance. Okay, so it's good to know what type of type 1 examples could sort of set you off, so to speak. So let's say, for example, you're a rock group playing in a bar, and there's some like stammering drunk who's just like,
Every
just
gig.
like, falling all.
I was
I know,
that's every
I know.
gig we've ever done.
Exactly, yeah. So just falling all over everybody and saying like, "Whoa, free bird," like
Freedom.
That's usually Will.
Yeah, wait a
Yeah.
second. No, it's actually usually my dad.
So
Well, no, his is my Sharona.
yeah, he's obsessed with that.
Ooh,
yeah.
well, that's a good
But
one.
he also
That's a
shouts
great
out
song,
Freebird
man.
because he knows we hate it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. There's always one. There's
Yeah.
always one. But again, I mean, knowing that some people are going to be like that, going in with that mentality kind of gives you an edge, instead of just assuming that everybody's going to be all like, happiness and rainbows and sunshine, which isn't the case at all.
No.
When alcohol gets involved, so you have
No,
to
God,
be
no.
you got to be kind of on your toes.
Gotta
with
take that edge
stuff.
off.
Or let's say a completely different venue. Let's say you're playing at Carnegie, right? You got this big fancy solo performance at Carnegie because you're the bee's knees, and you're out there doing your thing, and you realize that when you get there, there's going to be tons of music critics in the audience that are going to be listening to every single note you play and critiquing every single note that you play, every single emotion.
Talk
that you put
about
out
pressure.
there.
Good Lord.
Huge amounts of pressure. And as long as you go into it knowing that that's there, again, it's not going to completely go away, but at least you'll have like a fighter's chance of like getting to the end, which I think is pretty much everything in a high leverage situation like that. Or let's even say a school concert. Let's say you're at a high school and you're in a concert, And it's just, again, like we were talking about before, just friends, family, maybe the occasional, like, happy-go-lucky faculty member that happens to like music, just sort of comes to the principal, like that kind of thing. Like people that you generally wouldn't be too concerned about messing up in front of. There's always going to be those peers that want you to mess up on purpose. Like, again, like I was saying, ones that are jealous of what you can do, or ones that don't like you for some reason or other.
Well, those kids suck, and
it's usually because of our looks.
Yeah. But again,
Yeah.
I mean, as long as you go in knowing that, like don't go there assuming the greatest things are going to happen, and it's not gonna diminish your playing as much as you.
So you have to have a very realistic outlook when it comes to something like
Absolutely.
that, which is good. That's a
Yep.
good center to kind of have.
For sure. Yep. And just a caveat to that, you obviously don't have any control over who goes to your performances, just in general.
That drunk guy still
so at the
weasels
end of
his
the
way
day-
in sometimes. Even at Carnegie Hall, he could still be
Even
there.
at Carnegie, yeah.
Freebird.
Right. So, Freebird! Oh my gosh. At Carnegie? Oh,
Yeah.
God, that guy's everywhere.
But
He is within us all.
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, you do you, because you're up there, because you want to be up there, because you love what you do, because you have a passion for it, which leads me into my fifth one, desire. Okay? There has to be a desire, a willingness, a want, a passion burning inside.
It's the desire that lights the fire.
You need that. If you're determined to do something, you're going to do it. It's straight up human resolve at its finest, and it's the most important thing to remember on the list as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Because all that other stuff, it's really important and it's going to help, but at the end of the day, how do you want your music to sound to you?
That's always the most important.
Do you enjoy playing music? And if the answer is yes, you're gonna find a way. And it might take you years, it might take you decades, but if that burn is there, if that desire is just like
Desire
getting at
to
you,
light the fire, man.
then you're going to make it happen. And I can't stress that enough. So hopefully these 5 steps here that I've sort of racked my brain over, and have been doing for years, but never really kind of concretely put down until recently, hopefully that helps somebody out there.
See,
So, there you go.
I think that was perfectly. We're not going to top that. I
No.
think that was perfectly well.
Mic
We're just going to
drop.
talk about farts
Yeah.
more, so it doesn't. We can't really do it.
Fantastic.
I think that was beautifully well done. Hopefully, Paige, we helped kind of put some insight into these issues, that you might be facing, and just know it's not a do-all, end-all. There's tons of ways around it. I mean, everyone goes through it, and I think just to reiterate what Greg said at the end there, that desire, that passion to do what you do, that's what's going to get you through it, and it always will prevail and persevere, and I think that's incredibly important. So, with that being said, I would like to thank everyone so much for listening to the Drop the Beat podcast for this week. If you guys would like to write in a question one more time, it's charleslaurita.com/contact. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to support the band on Patreon for $1 a month, you get your name at the end of the videos that we do and things like that. Some other little bonus stuff
nice.
that we have in there. We have on the homepage of the website, which is charleslaurita.com, we have a big gaudy orange button. If you want to click that to become a patron, we would be incredibly appreciative. And if not, we will still love you just the same. I would love to thank our guest for this week, Mr. Goddamn Greg Marsh, and we would be more than happy to have you come back. We would love for you to come back and do this again.
Oh, sure. Guys, this was an absolute blast. Thanks so much for having me.
I wasn't lying when I said it would be fun and we would get down to the nitty-gritty.
Oh, yeah.
This was very, very good. So I would just once more just say to everyone at home, thank you so much for listening and beating off with us, and we will see you guys next time.
Ciao.